Καλησπέρα σας, κυρίες και κύριοι. Καλώς ήρθατε στο Καναδικό Ινστιτούτο στην Ελλάδα. Είμαι καθηγητής Brendan Burke, Professeur Διευθυντής του Ινστιτούτο. I am Brendan Burke. Welcome to the Institute. I'm from the University of Victoria in British Columbia, and I'm happy to be here this year serving as the interim director of the Canadian Institute. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to also announce our upcoming programming. On Wednesday, March 27th, our Homer and Dorothy Thompson Fellow, Barbara Scarfo, will be giving her lecture in this room, Mothers and Infants on Funerary Commemoration, a Cross-Cultural Study. So that will be March 27th at 7:30. So I hope all of you will attend. And then also, looking ahead to May, we have our open meeting coming up, and that will be on May 22nd, starting at 7 o'clock at the Danish Institute downtown in Plaka. And so I will be giving a presentation on the activities of the Institute for this last year, and our open meeting speaker will be Professor Sunjun Kim from the University of Toronto. So we have her lecture coming, the announcement and the abstract that will be publicized soon on our website. So tonight we are very happy to have our colleague from up north, Dr. Zisis, Bonias, and Jacques Perreault, who will be talking tonight on their project at Ancient Argilos. After an undergrad and MA at the University of Laval, Jacques Perreault, our speaker tonight, completed his doctoral studies in Paris. That same year, he was admitted as the first Canadian member of the French School of Archaeology at Athens. And this was a very distinguished appointment as the first Canadian. In 1987, he was appointed director of the Canadian Archaeological Institute in Athens at the time, the CIG now, and then returned to Quebec and taught for a brief stint at Concordia University, and then since 1993 has been at the University of Montreal. Since 2014, he's been the chair of the University of Montreal's History Department. He has taken part in many archaeological excavations in France, Tunisia, Syria, and then in Greece, in addition to his project, of course, in Argilos, which is 25 years and growing. He was at Malia, Thasos, and Lesbos. And so his main research interests and publications concern contact between Greeks and non-Greeks, trade in the ancient Mediterranean, and especially many aspects of Greek ceramic production. So we are very happy to have him tonight, and I will turn it over to Jacques, and you can see the title of his talk. Thank you all for coming.
Merci. Αυτό θα ήταν μόνο γαλλικά απόψε. Καλησπέρα σας. Από μένα καλώς ήρθατε στο Καναδικό Ινστιτούτο. Δυστυχώς ο συναδελφός μου, ο Ζήσο Bonias, δεν μπορούσε να είναι μαζί μας, το ήθελε πολύ και κάτι έτυχε τέλος πάντων. Οπότε εγώ θα πρέπει να κάνω την ομιλία. Δύσκολο πράγμα, αλλά καταφέρω. Και η αλήθεια ακόμα πιο δύσκολο για μένα θα τα κάνω και στα αγγλικά. For those of you who are not familiar with Argilos, I'll give a short introduction on the site, and before getting into the main topic of this evening, which is one of the areas where we have been excavating. Argilos is, of course, in northern Greece. Northern Greece, as you know, was occupied by Thracians at the beginning of the first millennium BC, and it was colonized. The northern shores of the Aegean were colonized by Greeks. These Greeks, they came mainly from three islands. That is, those Greeks who colonized the area between the Thermaic Gulf and the Nestos River came from three islands. The Evians established themselves around the Thermaic Gulf and along the two western prongs of the Chalkidiki Peninsula. Colonists from Andros established four colonies, Sane, Akantos, Stagira, and Argilos. And then, of course, our friends from Paros founded a big colony in Thasos, and from Thasos founded a series of smaller ones along the coast in front of the island. Argilos is very well situated. It's close to the Strimona River. The Strimon was one of the major entries to the heartland, Thracian heartland. It was also close to the Pangaean mountain, very rich in gold mines, close to Lake Kerkinitis, which was rich in silver, and so all this area was a sort of El Dorado in antiquity, and Greeks, Macedonian, Persians, everyone wanted to get their hands on this area. The site occupies a hill about 500 meters by 500 meters. The site was founded around the middle of the 7th century BC. The literary sources say, of 655, 54 BC. We have evidence of Greeks there during this period, and we have evidence of Thracians there even a bit earlier. So the site was occupied by Thracians when the Greeks first arrived. We've been working in 4 areas. So along the sea coast here, of course on the Acropolis, the southeast slope, and this area here, which we call the Kukludis sector. It's the name of the owners of this very large plot of land. This is what we're going to be speaking about this evening. Students participate every year, help us excavate, and this is how they look at the end of the day. But without their help, we wouldn't get as much done as we have been getting done during these last few years. So this is aerial view of the area along the seacoast. This is where we found the earliest levels of occupation. That is, we have them there, and we have also early material on the Acropolis, but that come from later fills. Floor levels we have along the seashore, and so this is where we have Thracian pottery that goes back to the 7th and even to the 8th century now. This is where we have various Greek pottery, East Greek, and of course Cycladic. This may be Andrian pottery. So the early material, which goes back at least to the middle of the 7th century BC. This is also where we found the earliest houses, huts are found in this area too. And it is an area which will see a great development during the 6th century, as elsewhere on the site. This is along the coast where we found part of the fortification wall of the city. The city was fortified around the middle of the 6th century BC, so around 550 BC. They build a fortification, and there's a very big urbanistic development on the site. And this is shown here. For example, we have different streets, and we have the view of the fortification here, but it's also very clear on the southeast slope of the hill, so southeast sector here. You see this very wide street and buildings which are built, in fact, on both sides of them. So we uncovered many different, a few big complexes here. I'll just give you a quick view of some of them. This is this is the first house we excavated, which was built in the middle of the 6th century, destroyed at the beginning of the 5th, rebuilt, destroyed again towards the end of the 5th, and finally destroyed in 357, like the rest of the site, by Philip II. He takes control of the city in 357, and he moves the population to Amphipolis. And so the site is abandoned. So you see that Argilos has a very short lifespan of 300 years, which is a good thing for us, because the architecture we have, the evidence we have of the city is quite early. We have clear 7th and 6th century buildings which are preserved on a very in some cases on very good heights, up to 4 meters high. I'll show you a few pictures. So this is rapidly House A in its first phase, composed of 2 separate rooms, and then that's around 550. In 525 they build this big building next to it. Everything is destroyed at the beginning of the 5th. When they rebuild the House A, they add rooms in the back, and there's an upper story to that, and then this will be once again partly destroyed at the end of the 5th, but there's not much change in the architecture. Next to it, building E, which is, I'm not getting into the details, but it's a very interesting type of building which appears in Greece around the middle of the 6th century. Elsewhere also you see one big room with the central hearth. Here's a bathtub from the latest phase. And this building, we found a small hoard of silver coins as a foundation deposit in its 2nd phase of occupation. So it's a very important building, and various objects, of course, coming from that same building. And of course, our heads are ram heads, which are antefixes. So we found 3 of those, which are associated once again to this big building. And finally, the Acropolis. The most interesting discovery of the Acropolis is what is under the roof here. I said that the site was abandoned in 357, but part of the Acropolis was reoccupied for a short period. We know that after Philip II conquered this whole area, to thank his generals, he distributed plots of land, and one of his generals received part of Argilos and built some sort of mansion on this Acropolis. It's really very interesting, because this is the highest point of the hill. You wouldn't expect the architecture to be preserved on such a height, and we have here the whole height of the ground floor. So it's 3 meters. Walls are 3 meters high. You see the staircase that brings you up to the upper floor, and of course he was using this to produce olive oil. We have the torpillon here in situ. This is the earliest known torpillon in situ from northern Greece. So it's a very, very interesting find. Now, this rapid development of the city from the middle of the 6th century onwards is of course very interesting when you look at the architecture, etc. But we didn't have that many proof of economic activities to go with this, and so we started to look at the material, and we had a few smelting kilns, which are linked to metallurgy, and so this is normal, of course, in the area. This is one example from the seashore, that early 6th century, and then back to House A here. This small room was a bronzesmith workshop, and so you see the rest of another example there. And even in building E, while they were building it, you see another example here of a small furnace in this area. So they were working metal, that is okay. There were, of course, fishing, right? Many objects linked to this activity, and there's agriculture going on, and there's textiles going on, and they're producing pottery as in other cities, and they're minting their own coins from the last quarter of the 6th century. But say, well, all this you have everywhere, so where's the difference? Where's the difference with Argilos? Why is it growing so quickly? Why is, you see this from, once again, the second half of the 6th and the 5th century, all of these this building activity going on. a few years ago, in 2012, we decided to explore this area because we wanted to more or less link what we had found along the coast with what we had on the southeast slope. And so we bought one small plot from the Cludis family, and we opened a few trenches there. And so the first year we found, these images are not very good, but we found these structures. It didn't look as anything very interesting, but we noticed that we had a series of rooms up here. And probably what was the most interesting was the southern wall here looked to be the way it was built much earlier. This was from the latest phase of occupation of the site, so from the 4th century. But this wall, when we looked at it, seemed much earlier. And so we opened a small trench in front of it, and we went down about 2.5 meters. And you see we found this sidewall here, and all this looked much more archaic as a building. So we decided the following year to excavate in front of that wall. And so this is when we found what you see here. So this building with 5 rooms, you see, so this is from the first year. This is our second year there. And one of these rooms, you see, has a press bed for press olives. And so we noticed that these were shops. And so we had the western limit of this complex, which is here. You see, this is an open, you see a gutter, an open gutter for rainwater, okay? on the western side of the building here. But of course, this continued here. But we didn't have, this wasn't our plot of land yet. So, well, we phoned David and we said, David, we're going to buy another plot of land. And so we bought the plot of land next to it. And what did we find? Well, we found another 5 rooms to this building here, and so another series of shops. So when we found this, we first looked at this, we said, wow, well, what we have is a simple version, another version of an early portico. Especially when looking at this wall here, you see that comes a bit out this way. We said, well, we probably have something like this. But these are Hellenistic. And our building was, well, for now, the latest phase was end of the 5th, early 4th century. And we quickly found that we had a problem with this, because we found in front of the entrances of some of these rooms tiles that fell most probably from the awnings over the door. So, this couldn't have been a portico. This was a series of shops in one big elongated building. Now, of course, we had 10 rooms. It continued, so we bought another part of our friends Portuguese. They love us. And we excavated that, and this is what we got to. So we have here this complete building composed of 12 shops. On one side, limited by this open gutter. On the other side, we have a street here, about 1.70 meter wide street, north-south. And we have an alley in the back here. Now, this is because of the slope of the hill. The back wall here is about 3 meters high. And so these back walls, they serve as terrace walls for the alley in the back, which gives access to this other building here, our building H. And then on the other side of the street, you see that we have 2 other buildings, P and Q. The dating of these plans is terrible. I'm sorry about that. The plans are coming out here. The dating of our building L. So we were sure that we had two phases. When we started to excavate it, you see the 4th century floor and the 5th century floor, and this we have in all rooms. So this was built at least somewhere at the end of the 1st quarter of the 5th century. But then at one point, excavating here room, what is 246, this is the 5th century floor, we started to see sand with small sand pockets around, and so you see, we opened this up, and we just went down, and we went down, and we found an earlier floor, which is our 6th century floor. And so this shop here, this one at least, existed during the second half of the 6th century. Now, since then, we have found evidence of the 6th century level in 2 other rooms. So we now think that the whole building was built in the middle of the 6th century, which makes it, as you will see, the earliest known building of this type, commercial building of this type in Greece, and in fact elsewhere also. This is to give you an idea of these floor levels. So this is the 4th century floor, which covers the destruction here of the 5th century one. And so here again the general view. So that's for the chronology. The function, that is what they were producing, selling in these shops. Of course, we're still working on the material. It's not easy because there's not that much left in these rooms. We know, of course, once again, for this is an easy one. Okay? For the olive press these exist elsewhere, but in later periods. This is an example from Delos in the 2nd century BC. We think that one of the rooms, they were producing textiles. We found, Bella will say how many, 50, 60, I don't know, loom weights in this room, and a few other elements would make us think that they were selling textiles there. In another room, we have quantities of deer antlers, and these deer antlers are all worked, and I have a PhD student working on this, and they were from these antlers. They were producing various types of objects, and he is working on all our bones from all the sites, but he noticed that the ones coming from this room are worked in a specific way, which is different from all the other material, that bone material from the rest of the site. So this is very close context, and you have one person which is working this in a specific way. There was even a boar tusk. These boar tusks, which are used to produce, you see the holes in, they were used to produce big bracelets. In another room, the last one at the end there, L12, we have an oven. We don't know what they were cooking in it, but an oven there. The room next to it, there are bases here to hold amphoras. And one of the amphoras, we have about, I think, around 10 from that room. One of them contained olives in it. And so this is, probably to have a quick access to storage jars here to sell the produce which was in them. Now, another, I'd say, proof that we have, these are all shops, the quantity of coins. We found close to 500 coins from this building. It's incredible. It's really some rooms, I mean, they have 60, 70, 80 coins in a room. So it's really, I don't know, I mean, so many holes in the pockets. It's astonishing. Another interesting aspect of these are the small altars. Each shop has one of these small altars. In one room we even had, you see this small bronze, this was used to burn as incense burners. They're found, you see here, this is an example, in Pella. So this is another interesting aspect of these shops. Now, on an architectural point of view, there are very interesting particularities to building L. The internal walls, dividing walls, are all built the same way. So the base is stone, there's a stone base, and then it is, the upper part is clay. And as you get towards the back of the wall, you see that the stone part is higher, goes higher up. Here, see, it goes higher up here, and the rest, all this part here is clay. You have this is earth now, but you see this is what is left of the original, clay covering that. And then once this was done, then on both sides of the wall, they add an extra layer of clay. So in fact, the whole wall, stone and the upper part, are again covered with clay. In one room, they added these, for I don't know what reason, they added these slabs of gneiss on top of the clay part covering the wall. These shops, there wasn't any upper floor. We have no evidence of an upper floor. We have evidence of maybe a mezzanine, what would have been a patane, for storage. And we think that in this room, for example, the base here may be something that was used to put a ladder, to base a ladder on to go up to this mezzanine. This is my cousin's shop. I'm sure, no, this is pictures of Near Eastern shops, and the interesting part is here in the back. You see the stone here in the back on which the ladder, you put the ladder on, that brings you up to the patio. So this is, what we may have had, but there's surely no complete closed upper floor to these shops. Another interesting aspect are the thresholds. Now look at these thresholds very carefully, and you see that you notice that the pivots here, holes for the doors, are opening on the outside. They're not opening on the inside as they should in a normal house. The doors open on the inside, not on the outside. And this is also interesting. And if any of you have been to the Near East, I worked many years in Syria, and you see these in Damascus, for example. This is one of Damascus souks. You see when the shops are closed here, and when they open, the doors always open on the outside, because you save space on the inside of your shop, because you don't have to keep the area around the doors clear to open them, and you add space on the outside because you are adding some of your products, you are placing them on the outside, and even putting some on the doors themselves. And so that's what they're doing. So you see that you understand why they're working that way in Archaic. Another interesting aspect is the walls, the front walls, the facades of these shops. You see that they're all different. Okay? This is shop 2 and shop 3. You see that this is different than shop 3 to shop 4, and etc. So each shop has a different facade. And when you look even at the back walls, you notice some differences in them. Now, what does this mean? This means probably that, most probably, that the city surely allocated the space to build such a big, this is 65 meters long. So the city, this was a decision by the city to allocate this space and to build these shops. The city probably decided on the width, on the size of each of these shops. But the owners were probably responsible for building these shops. And so they used their own workmen, they got their own stones, and they built their shops. I will show you an example from close by here, where when you read the report, you see that it's exactly the same thing. And in fact, I'll show it to you now. There are a few examples of these shops. Of course, Athens. These are, you must all know this article by Susan Wartrock, which wrote on these various buildings that had different meanings to them, but now are considered to be shops. There's a long one here, the classical commercial building, for which you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms here. And when this was found too, the excavator noted that the facades were all different, and it also thought that probably the owners had the responsibility to build their own conquest. There's another example in southern Italy, the site of Locri Episiferi. You see these alignments here of, they're not sure if they're shops or if they're rooms for the sailors passing by, but you see the concept here. And these ones here are shops. This is surely shops here. And there's another example here from Morgantina in Sicily, where there was a first group here of 6 shops built, and then they added another 6 to them. So you see that these exist. The interesting point regarding Argilos is that all these are at the earliest from the end of the first half of the 5th century. So the 5th and 4th century. Argilos goes back to the 6th century BC. So this in itself is quite interesting. Let's have a look at the buildings around building L, so H, Q, and P. The easiest one for us to understand is building P. Why? Because it follows the exact same system as building L, and I mean it's in the continuity of building L. So you see here the two first rooms we've been excavating. Look at the threshold. You see how this threshold. I'll show you a closer view of this. So this is P1 here, the entrance here, and here you see this is the entrance to P2. P2. You see the side wall, same system. You see this one is very well built. The wall here, you see at the back part here is high up, and then we have part of the clay, original clay, still over here. So these are clearly shops, maybe except for the first room here, that is a P1. There's a few particularities to P1. First, you see that there's a placosta, there's a stone base to it in front of it, floor on the outside of it, which this is the only shop that has this. All the other shops, it's earth on the outside. There's no street there. There's no, but this one has this. It has this, I think, mainly because of this street here, which is very, very steep, quite steep. And when it rains, all the water comes down here. And so by having this stone step, whatever, here in front, the water doesn't turn in front of it, but has to continue down. But when you look at the way it's built, notice here in front of the door that you have these white stones around here, and you have here a series of two grey ones, which is interesting and in itself. And in the room, we found this roof tile, which this hadn't fallen from the roof. It was placed there, and in back of the roof tiles, right here, we found a base here of 7 pieces of these rounded pieces of gneiss. These originally served as covers for pythons, but these ones were packed one on top of the other, and then fallen right here all around it was a luterion. So this was surely a stand for a luterion, which was placed right in front of this pan tile that was there, probably for water, so that the water didn't go on the surrounding floor. And so there may have been, I think, a different function to this room than to the other commercial ones. There's another point to this also that I forgot to show you this, but the entrance to P1 is centered. It's in the threshold is in the center room. All the other rooms of these shops, the entrances are a bit off centered towards the left. So this is surely another series of shops, except for this first room. And curiously, the first room of building L is also a bit curious. This building, room L1, is the only room that doesn't have a threshold giving on to the front of the building. You access L1 by L2. And so there's, of course, a reason for this, which we won't understand. Building H is a bit more problematic. It's not as well preserved. We're very close here to today's level, and so a lot of the walls haven't survived now. But we still see that it is divided, composed of 12 rooms. But in this case, the rooms have interior separations. So there's one separation, one wall that separates the room in 2 parts, in the front part and the back part. And a lot of the front part of the rooms also have another separation, to making 2 spaces in the front. These are not shops. These are not shops. We found that at least 3 of them have small hearths here, so cooking areas. So this people will probably, most probably, staying in these units. But then at the same time, we have at least one example here of yet another furnace, which is linked to, we have tons of slag that was found around there, linked to metallurgical activities. So these may have been a kind of half and half living area and working spaces for this building. And then finally we have building Q. And so building Q, again, we have 2 rooms. This we just started working on this one a bit last summer. This one has been fully excavated to the latest level, so the 4th century floor. And it's quite interesting because this is a house. And this is a house with a front room here and 2 smaller rooms in the back. The back room here, this was storage area. The back at the left, the back room here, you see this rounded space there. This was used for, we really don't see anything. This was used to put one of those mills, the Olympian mills. I don't know if you know how these work. You have the base here, put it on there, then you have the upper part, and you put a piece of wood through that, and your grain is going through here, and then you are moving this over that, to get the grain to pass through. And so these are done on these spaces here. So that was over there. And then the front area, there's a bathtub. You see as you come in on the left, and they're very ingenious people in Argilos. So they have an opening in the wall, you see, with this triangular piece of stone here. So we empty the bath straight into the street. Now, isn't that something? And then on the other side here, you have the cooking area here. And here there surely was an opening also on the wall for the smoke. And you have this part here, which is the base of a stone staircase. So you have three stairs of this stone staircase. And now this is very, if you know traditional Greek architecture in the houses, you find these every, in many, many houses. And so this was surely the case of House E with, you see, I'm very sorry. This is not nice. You see the staircase here. So the only part of staircase bringing you up to the upper floor. So we are sure that as regards Cube 1, this is the first proof that we have the first house, and that there was an upper story to these buildings, which at least this building built in, this is the second row, right? So built in back of the shops in front of them. So we have to see now if this is the case for all the units of P and Q. Now these housing units, I'll show you this one example. There's not that many, but this is from Evia, from the Villavacos fort. These units that they had excavated, and they say that they, well, at least some say that they were used by the soldiers to house the soldiers there. But you see, it's groups here. So these exist in Greek world. A lot of objects from this, of course, this house of amphoras and different storage jars and anokois and cooking pots and etc. And of course, coins. Not as many as in the shops, but a few of them. So this gives you an idea of this area. Now there's one question here. Two more things I want to address. The first is, what do we call these? What is this area? So my talk is shops, workshops, and houses of the Merchants' Court. I love this title. It's very 19th century, of the Merchants' Court. But what's a Merchants' Court? And so is this Merchants' Court? Is this a commercial district? Is this a shopping mall? What do we do? I think that we don't have a Merchants' Court. There's lots of merchants were everywhere in the cities. I don't think that we may have partly a commercial district, partly, but then we don't know how many buildings like this we have. We don't know how far this goes on each side. A shopping mall is a very modern term, but you can imagine these shops. You have 12 here. If there's another 12 here, you have 24 shops. You're getting close to a shopping mall. I think, but maybe what you have are commercial streets. That's what we have in Greek cities during this period. Like it's areas in the city where you have these commercial streets, and you find these. I go once again back to Locri. We're not sure for this, but this is surely the case. This is one of the main streets outside of the city here where you have these. And of course you find these once again later during the Hellenistic period. This is Thassos. This is well-known commercial street in Thassos, right in back of the Agora, and everyone knows Delos, of course. These rows of streets with all these rows of shops in Delos. So these exist, and I think that already in the Archaic period we had this same type of arrangement in Argilus. One last. one last aspect here is that I said at the beginning that we had originally started to dig here to try to link all of this together. Especially to this part here. You see how big this is compared when you see the southeast sector here with these big houses we have. This is very, very big. So how does all this get together? So we bought another plot, which was the last one, the last gratuitous plot. We bought this here. This Brendan signed for it. Brendan signed for this one here. And so last summer, I said, okay, we'll open here to see if you see the main street here. I'll show you again to see if this. Yes, here. No, but here's, of course, you say, how thick this is linked. You see this street here, and you say, well, come on, it's easy. This is a north-south, so this goes down towards the port, and on the other side, you go up to your southeast sector. So where's your problem? I understand. But this is a very narrow street. It's a meter 70. It's not that wide. And when you look at the one we have on the southeast slope here, this is 5 meters wide. This is serious stuff here. And so I wanted to check to see if this street that we had here, right? You see the south sector, it continued down towards the port. And so this is how it was last summer. And so I just went with Zapa, and I just cleaned a bit here. I found these stones here. So I said, well, we have it. The thing must continue. And so we continued, we opened, and we just continued. And so you see, we have it here, some 70 meters. We covered 70 meters along to the street here. See, it doesn't go straight towards the port, and there's a reason for this. But here it's 8 meters wide. This is a main street of Archaic. There's one big building here, and then there's 2 or 3 other ones along this side here. Now, why it doesn't go straight to the sea is because of the slope of the hill. So if you are putting it straight down here, you have a very steep slope. So that's no good. By putting it a bit sideways like this, it's you say pure. Pure. You see, so things are easier here. You can imagine the carts coming up here, etc., etc. So all this is, of course, very, very interesting. But since it's not going straight down, what's happening with our building? We're far from our buildings. We're far from our buildings. So there is a small problem, or at least we thought that there was a small problem. Now, during the autumn, we had a very modern problem over here. Is that there's a modern water pipe that brings the water to the surrounding villages. It goes along the street here. But here, for a reason you don't quite understand, it cuts through. It cuts through here. And so we already broke it 3 times here. And when you break these water pipes, it's a big kind of quantity of water that comes out of it. And so we said we have to get this fixed. So we opened a trench along the road, and we just put in another pipe following the road there, so that we don't have this problem in the back. By doing this, we found another problem. Is the OT cable. That's more difficult to get. Anyhow, and so we put this in, and I opened a trench to see how deep, to see if these buildings P and Q continued, and how deep were the remains, to get all the, see how difficult it is to get all this earth out, because there's just one thing I forgot to tell you, is that for the last 25 years we've been putting our earth here. So this is when we went out. And so I opened a trench, and here, and what did I find here? is, this is Q, and this is the back wall of Q here. And so this building, Q, you see the back wall here, and it finishes here, okay? So this building is, like the other ones, 65 meters long. It is probably separated in 12 rooms. And P in front of it must be 65 meters long and separated in another 12 rooms. And at the end here, where the building finishes, there's a ramp, slope that starts here, and you have these dressed stones and that's on the slabs here. And this goes towards our main street. So you see, this here now is the total length of buildings P and Q, which are the same as, once again, L and H. So you have 130 meters of shops going around here. And then we'll have to see how this connects. So it's extremely interesting situation, and you understand the very rapid economic and urbanistic development of the city. You will now understand why they're building like mad from the middle of the 6th century onwards, because of all this very, very rich economic activities that are going on in the city. So there's one thing left or more, is to come and visit us. And it's very easy. It's written. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was great. I've read so much about this project, but it's really great to hear so much detail. I think you'll take questions.
Yes.
Very impressive presentation. Congratulations. You were very detailed about all these shops, the walls, and that they show us a lot of things about the economic growth of the city around 6th century, right, and 5th perhaps. But you also mentioned about this, you very nicely said, blow-minded number of coins. But I didn't hear much about the importance of these coins in this respect. What do the coins show us about the pictures and the coins? Do they testify about the economic growth and about the history of the city, whatever it is? I would like to
we have a very good Katerina Krizansaki, who's working on the coins. And most, I'd say 90%, or 80% of the coins all come from amphibians. And they are, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but at least, I mean, most of them are from, of course, the latest phase of occupation of the city, so the first half of the 4th century.
by Philip.
Before. We have a small problem because I have the impression the dating of these coins from Amphipolis are very wide. You have a very wide date. They go from 415 and up and down to 357 they put because of Philip's conquest of the area. But in fact, they keep on showing up a bit afterwards in Amphipolis. We, in a few shops, think that after the destruction of Philip's, some of these continued to be occupied for a few years. Not a lot, a few. And we're trying to see differences in the coins. And what Katerina tells me, for now I don't see nothing. And she says, if they had continued to be occupied for some years anyhow, we would start to see coins of the era of Philip. And we don't see them. So they may have been squattered a bit, they may have been, but you have the impression that in some rooms you have this other occupation. But it's hard to see. But 90% of the coins, 80% come from. There's an article that will come out in publishing the symposium we have, which she's giving all of this.
We'd like to see that.
No, it's very good.
Also, do we have any archaeological evidence of how the city looked like after the occupation by Philip, or how the city looked like after the occupation?
It was abandoned.
Completely?
Yeah, it was simply abandoned.
So it was
Because
destroyed?
except the Acropolis. The only evidence of Hellenistic occupation is the Acropolis. On the slope we went with, there's not one Hellenistic church, not one. So it's all from the Acropolis, it's there, and it's maybe for 3 generations, and then it's finished.
Well, you said some of the generals built mansions.
One mansion. One is enough. You know that for Philip, this is a good way. He adds to his defense system. So Philip, on the frontier, on his frontiers, he prefers to have one very strong city, which in this case is Amphipolis, than many smaller ones. But then all around the territory, by giving out these plots of land to his generals, they are building these mansions that serve also as surveillance points all around his kingdom like this. So it is, and we start understanding this because we find other ones, and they're starting to link all these together. Say, yeah, it's a very, very brilliant idea.
About the 5th century coins,
Yes.
we saw the hoard of Akathos coins,
Yes.
and we saw also 3 coins of Argilos with the horse, the Pegasus.
Pegasus. Yeah.
The 3 coins of Argilos, they were found in situ, or they were brought by the peasants to be given to you.
These 3 ones, I don't think they were found in Argos. This is
Not
work at Liampi. But
Exactly.
we have found some.
I'm asking you because it's a big discussion about those coins, if they are from Therma or from Argilos. So Professor Liambi had decided that they are from Argilos. But we don't have finds in situ, I think.
We have.
We have.
Yes, we have.
In the 5th century.
What? In the 5th century.
Ruins.
Yes, in the 5th. Yes, we have silver coins from silver coins.
Right.
We don't have
Argilos. I'm asking about the Pegasus.
Argilos.
Yes.
I have to check how many bronze coins we have.
In 5th century, we don't have bronze.
They reappear, I think, in the second half of the 5th, no?
Who? The bronze?
The bronze ones.
No, in the 4th.
In the 4th.
Yes.
4th. There's a problem there in the 5th century.
Yes.
With what Liampi says on the issues from Argos.
Because of course we have the tetradrachms, but the tetradrachms they were to export silver.
Yes.
Because all those cities they were mining the silver, and they were stacking coins, the tetradrachms, to export the silver to Egypt, to Syria, and everywhere where it's not.
But we have smaller denominations.
And another question also: what about the post-Roman period?
Post-Roman?
Yes.
Nothing.
Because in Akathos, which is very nearby, we have the attacks, the barbarian attacks, let's say, to those cities. So here we don't have any sign of ruins, nothing.
Completely abandoned.
After the general, let's say,
the general died,
yes, and some Hellenistic, nothing.
Right. There may be the abandonment of this house may be linked to. There are some problems. I think around 276 BC. I think there's some problems up north there, and maybe linked to that. But there's nothing, after that, there's really nothing a lot. And it's surprising to see, because these buildings must have been visible for many years, before slowly being covered up. And so it's surprising that no one even took the stones from these houses and these buildings, etc. But it's quite surprising.
How are you envisioning the roof of the building L, for example?
I think it may be, I don't know, maybe just sloped. I don't know.
And you do have any of the roof tiles in each?
We have a roof. We don't have that many, but this is another. It's one of the problems we have, because when people move, when they say you leave, you bring everything, and everything is everything. So your roof tile, you're going to take them with you. Whatever you can take, you bring them. So in some places, there's not that many. We have a few bits and pieces. One room, we have so many roof tiles in one of those shops. I think they were selling roof tiles because there were so. This is the only room we have quantities of them. So and there's another room. There's another one that showed you the picture that you see. There's a lot there too.
Yeah. And you say the word shop, and then sometimes, but also I keep thinking of some workshops. I mean, are they workshops or are they shops?
They're both.
Yeah.
Because they are. I mean,
they're making things.
They're making things. They're working there. They're selling them. You see, if you're in the Near East, you see it's everywhere.
And everyone's individualized too. It's not so much.
It is completely individualized. This is interesting. That is, you don't have
everybody doing textile.
5 perfume shops. In fact, on contrary of what you worked on. In Bonias, where you have, I think it's state shops, I would say. So they're all producing textiles.
Beer and bread.
And beer, and we need beer for the textiles. But it's a different.
Yes.
I mean, the economics are different. But here, you have these individual shops. You will see a bit. You'll start to see in Pella when they build the Agora in Pella, and the Agora of Pella is 350 BC. Right? So when they build the Agora in Pella, then you see this. The perfume shops and the shops, and then you're starting to group things together. So it's another step.
Well, this is an amazing site and an important commercial center, I guess. At some point, you have shown us some small altars.
Yeah.
And you said, if I'm not mistaken, that there was one in each room or something like that.
Yeah.
Does it mean that you see a correlation between commerce and religion?
Yes.
You do.
Today, when I go to this small supermarket near Kerdύλλια, next to Archaic, when I arrive in the morning, sometimes I'm early, and he's just opening the shop. And so he opens the shop, and then he shuts the synergasia, the alarm system. And then he goes in front of his cash register, and he does his sign, and he says something very well on his time. I know he hopes that he's going to get rich again now. And so I'm not at all surprised. And in Athens, well, this is Rothroff's book on the shops in Athens, where they have these deposits of pyres, yeah, which are linked to also to each shop. Or
yeah, sometimes many in one shop at different.
Yeah, which also are some religious activity linked to this.
Very interesting and an amazing excavation too. Congratulations.
So how big are those altars?
They're about 30 centimeters.
Ah, not big.
No, not big.
Ah, okay.
Portable altars.
Because we have a small one that we found recently.
Oh, yeah.
But it's very small. That's why I remind me the shape. It's a square base with the molding, very simple.
Yeah.
I have to look where it's come from. I can compare. Right, good. Okay.
Yes.
I have a specific question about millstones.
Sorry?
About millstones.
Oh, yes.
You talked about this space, which was in the corner of this room. But did you have the millstone on it?
Yeah, not on it.
Not on
Oh,
it.
you have a piece of it next to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was the Olympian.
The Olympian. The
Olympian.
Olympian.
Okay.
It's funny, eh? When you don't know how this thing works, when you look at how does this work, and then you say, my God, no. You know, the heaviest thing, that's what they were moving. You know? The heaviest part.
But actually, it's quite easy to move.
Yes,
since it's mechanized, it's quite easy to move just with one hand.
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
Ah,
so
you
can
try,
have it.
yeah.
I didn't try, but I heard about it.
And then the other ones, the other ones, you know, the oval, eh? Ones are that's interesting because I thought, I'm sure, and I don't know, you can't know this, and they have these like handles attached to them, and I thought they were handles, but no, I thought you do like this, but no, you turn them around, right? And they're on you have the flat stone, you turn it around, and you're moving like this.
And so you find
getting
both
old.
types. That's the both types you found on the site, or
Sorry?
did you find other millstones like
Quantities.
this one?
Quantities.
Okay.
Yeah, you work on that.
I work on that. Yes.
Yes, you have to speak because we're interested in having someone. They can look like microscopes of this. Yeah.
Maybe this is a good time to break and have some wine and snacks too. So let's thank our speaker one more time.
Thank you.